Hello, and welcome to In Pursuit of Truth and Happiness, the Odyssey, Episode 1, The Wrens of Society. Last episode, I gave my final analysis of the Iliad with specific reference to the question of what Homer, the author of the Iliad, believes the human condition needs to be fulfilled and happy. However, before fully concluding on this question of Homer's philosophy of the human condition, I must embark on an analysis of Homer's great sequel to the Iliad, the Odyssey. It is now to the Odyssey I turn. Being a sequel to the Iliad, it is tempting to see the Odyssey as another story chronologically, with some recurrent and new characters. This is, however, misleading. The Odyssey rather is an extension of the Iliad and the Iliad's focus on war. With the Iliad, we see war and its impact on mankind, with the resultant dehumanization, the destruction of civilizations that have reached an apogee of prosperity, and all the tragedy that accompanies such destruction. Whole-scale raping of women, murdering of infants, the slaughter of men, the tearing apart of families, all of which are the delicate strands of society. Moreover, this destruction stems from, as stated in my analysis of the Iliad, from the human attempt at apotheosis, born as this is out of the all-too-human desire to transcend our limitations on our own terms. The Odyssey, on the other hand, has two foci. Firstly, and in connection with the Iliad, the destabilizing impact war has on civilizations, even if the civilization in question is now the object of war, as the city of Troy was. Secondly, the sheer folly of human cunning, in as far as human cunning imparts a false sense of confidence in the self in the face of dangers too great for any mortal to face. In this we see a similarity between Odysseus, who retains this trait of deceit that seemingly knows no bounds, and Achilles, who also seems to ignore his own limitations. This second focus will be the object of my analysis when I analyze Odysseus as a character and philosophical argument of Homer. Here, in this introduction, I will begin with the first focus, of war tearing apart the delicate fabric of society, of civilizations, be the civilization the object of war, such as Troy, or be the civilization one of the ones targeting the object of war, such as we see with Ithaca. The Odyssey begins by telling the reader of the fate of Troy, which had been sacked between the events of the Iliad and the Odyssey. The opening moves on to forewarn the reader of the folly of the characters we will encounter in the story, folly that involves offending the gods. The next scene takes us to a council of the gods who are discussing what to do about Odysseus, who has gotten lost on his way home from Troy due to Odysseus offending Poseidon. At this point, the scene moves to Ithaca, where the king of Ithaca, Odysseus, has been absent for 20 years. We find Odysseus's wife, Penelope, is being wooed by numerous suitors, the best men, presumably, from Ithaca and other locales in and around Greece. We next find the son of Odysseus, Telemachus, having never known his father, lost in his transition to manhood, unable to figure out how to be a man. At this point, I will pause my summary of the story and talk a little bit about the structure of the Odyssey, as this factors greatly into how I will be analyzing the story. The Odyssey is written in 24 books. The books can be divided up into two halves, books 1 through 12 and books 13 through 24. Books 1 through 12 can be subdivided into books 1 through 4, which sets up the situation in Ithaca reaping the consequences of its king being absent for 20 years, and books 8 through 12, which detail the years of Odysseus' journey from Troy and his eventual return to Ithaca. Books 13 through 24 detail Odysseus' plotting revenge on the suitors and reclaiming his rightful throne. To break up the Odyssey shows us quite simply that the majority of the Odyssey is about Odysseus retaking Ithaca from the suitors. This is a great irony, I find, because the Odyssey, in the popular imagination, likes to focus on Odysseus and the Cyclops, or going through Scylla and Charybdis, or Odysseus with Circe and Calypso. Yet each of these episodes, while vital to the story in as far as they help us learn who Odysseus is as a man, and by extension, what philosophical argument he represents, are only minor steps, even footnotes, for the bulk of the story focuses on Odysseus and the suitors. It is this final point that brings me back to the topic of this first episode. That is, how the Odyssey focuses on how war upends the delicate fabric and foundation of society, the other half of the vision of war that the Iliad offers to us. Before we continue on, though, we must discuss what exactly society is, and moreover, what man is. The latter point is a point I talked about implicitly. The two ideas of society and man are so interrelated that they cannot be separated, for society is made up of mankind. To understand society, therefore, one must understand man, or at least how Homer understands man. Only when we understand how Homer understands man and how society is composed of a series of hierarchical relations between people right down to the family unit can we begin to understand the philosophical lessons Homer has to teach us on the topics of war, its tragic effects on mankind, and what the path to human happiness is, accompanied by other great questions regarding the true nature of justice, the true nature of the universe, and the use of human reason, along with the prideful failings of human beings that seem to ignore our all too human limitations. In the next Odyssey analysis episode, I shall proceed to define these ideas to the best of my ability as they are defined by Homer, while also cross-referencing these definitions with other definitions given by a handful of different thinkers over time in pursuit of an objective understanding of these ideas. In this way, I hope to start a conversation with Homer over these concepts communicated to us by the Iliad and the Odyssey. From that point on, I will continue the discussion of how we can define society and man. However, before embarking upon a continuation of analyzing what Homer has to offer to us, I must pause and further elaborate on a topic that I covered in my first episode, but still needs further attention if my approach to the literary works I will be discussing is to be understood properly. That is, I must discuss what it means for truth to be objective. The purpose of this detour is not to take away from the Odyssey or any other written work, but to firmly place in view the goal that I intend to accomplish with this podcast, to reclaim the lost sense of the objective nature of truth. Thank you for listening to this episode of In Pursuit of Truth and Happiness.